Thank you very much for the kind words and introduction and for the invitation. And I would need the slides. I can already, sorry, my fault, digital. So when I was invited to talk about reflections of a clinician, the first thing running to my mind was what actually is my current situation. So I am facing an increasing number of medications coming up. I am facing a lot of biomarkers from imaging like OCT, MRI. I'm facing blood and CSF markers. I'm facing my clinical examination showing a high variability of my patient's presentation. I'm facing patient history, sometimes very large information, sometimes only a few. I'm facing papers about new upcoming clinical trials and healthcare authorities' guidelines how using those medications. And I'm facing, meanwhile, increasing digital endpoints. And in the middle, there am myself, the doctor, and I have to decide now what is actually the type of MS my patient has, what would be the best treatment to give, and can I say something about the prognosis. So the second thing running through my mind after I heard I should give my reflections on as a clinician was, are there any unmet needs? So first of all, my main goal as a clinician is to prevent my patients from acquiring sustained disability. The next question would be, how do they acquire sustained disability? Today, we think that acquiring disability is based on two mechanisms. One is incomplete recovery from relapses, and the other one would be a progression independent of relapse activity, PIRA. So what would be then an unmet need? An unmet need would be detecting and defining early progression for accurate prognosis, finding an optimized therapy for my patient, knowing the time when to modify the therapy, and of course a confirmation of therapy response, as well as having the chance for a focused selection of recruitment in clinical trials and potentially having new outcomes in clinical trials based on that. Or in other words, to say, delaying the time until patients have reached a certain EDSS milestone like EDSS 4 or EDSS 6. So what about current biomarkers we have for early progression? Well, there are many. The problem is they have a limited accuracy, especially on an individual level. Further, they come in great numbers. So I need to have a combination of several markers, which is difficult at clinical practice to use. So basically, for progression, what we do is we take the worsening of the EDSS over a certain time span. So what about now novel biomarkers? Well, there is a number of different sources for data, like imaging, clinical data, or patient-derived data. The problem is we often don't know where to find the most relevant information in the data we analyze. So machine learning may aim to extract possibly complex relations among the data we gather and generate a prediction where early progression might start. So what is now artificial intelligence for novel biomarkers? Artificial intelligence basically is the learning effect of a computer system when you give the computer system any kind of data. And AI is actually a term which contains several tools like machine learning and deep learning, from which machine learning, especially supervised learning, is the most common used process. The first time I had actually experienced machine learning was about 10 years ago in a collaboration with MS centers and Microsoft Research in Cambridge, as well as Novartis. What we were looking for is to reduce the variability of different neurologists in grading disability in an MS patient. So what we did is we recorded with a Kinect camera standardized execution of coordination tests. We used the depth image videos to feed a machine learning algorithm with the idea at the end to have one score based directly on patient's performance. That's great. I saw that super cool, so at the end we give the algorithm a couple of videos, and then the algorithm learns itself, and at the end the algorithm tells me as a clinician what to look for. It didn't work like this. So first of all, we realized an unsupervised process where we don't give any specific ideas is not possible due to the number of videos we have. So we would have needed more than 10,000 patients to go an unsupervised way in this direction. Not going to happen. Next step was then, okay, and we feed labeled videos. Even though we all were experts that time, we had difficulties to agree on a certain grading of a patient. So I learned the first challenge here is the accuracy of labeling of data you put into a machine learning algorithm. That was something. And the second thing is we realized that that image had a very low resolution, so we had to go on RGB videos, which are the same videos where we made our decision on, so it's an ongoing project. So I was a little bit disappointed because my expectation would have been I give a few information and I get a lot of information back. Okay, that was 10 years ago. I learned, meanwhile, that's not going to happen like this. So what about artificial intelligence now in non-MRI data? Because we will hear from MRI data later today. Well, in a recent review, looking for machine learning studies on non-MRI data in the years 2014 to 2020, they had about 66 studies included. Most of them looked for separating non-MS subjects against MS patients. A few of them looked for disease status, prognosis, treatment response, and to distinguish MS subtypes. They had different types of clinical data investigated. Some studies looked for patient histories, others for measurement, but most likely all were retrospective data. They used different types of machine learning approaches, as you see on the right side, and the conclusion or the statement or the finding were the majority of those studies had included only less than 200 patients. Most studies focused only on one topic or on one data source, and only a few studies reached an accuracy of 90%. What I learned is the minimum you would expect from a machine learning approach. Further, there was a lack of longitudinal following up, so it was more or less only retrospectively data analysis. The authors concluded then, okay, what to improve? How can we improve? And they said, okay, first of all, we need shared data sets, like MS-based. So you cannot hang on with only one data set. The second thing is also you have to share your experimental protocols. So what kind of algorithm is the best actually? Further, we need more standardized source of data, like the best would be data which is digitally captured and provided. And very important, you have to engage patients from the beginning and collect data over a long time period. So the conclusions the author made was that machine learning has the potential in the search of non-MRI biomarkers, but finding biomarkers to detect early progression is yet an understudied topic. Talking about standardized source data, there are already some improvements, like the neurostatus EEDSS, where you have a standardized examination protocol, digitally capture, and even a consistent check. And talking about large data sets, we have now at least two very good examples, the DREAMS and the Floodlight application, which provide a digital procedure how to capture disability between clinical visits on a standardized manner. Talking about these kind of apps, they also have directly brought in a new challenge for AI. It's a challenge of big data analysis. So another aspect here I would like to touch only briefly is the big data, say lots of data, is the so-called curse of dimensionality. When I was preparing another talk in the past, a paper with that crossed my mind. I said, what is this? Basically, it said if you want to have a robust AI model, you need to have a very large sample size, especially if you would like to increase your dimensions, meaning looking for more variables. Otherwise, you end up with a blind spot, meaning if you then take your model into reality and facing with new data, you will have wrong conclusions. So you need to think when you prepare a machine learning-based study on MS data to optimize what you're looking for, define the features. You need to prepare repeatedly studies to see which feature changes on a natural base and which feature is changing really with the aim that a change has happened for the data set. And you need to design directly that your training set, your trained AI, is actually applicable for the target you are looking for. And last but not least, the best would be that your outcomes have a yes or no target. And of course, once you deployed it, you have to make a continuous monitoring of this training data because new data may change your algorithm in the future. So I learned a bit of machine learning and how to conduct the study in that direction, and that's not so easy. Still, if I summarize my reflections, I really believe that AI is an approach to provide more than just a perspective to find biomarkers to meeting the unmet needs soon. But there are some challenges we have to take care for and have to be addressed. Well, one challenge is, of course, the lack of standardization and collaboration and data sharing, which actually Lisbeth has announced directly in her first speech today. The second is that we have to integrate patients from the beginning. One very good example is the PROMS initiative, where this is practiced. And, of course, it is also very important that we have ethical considerations always in our mind. And I would like to end with a direct quote from a paper which is quoted below, which says, alleviating uncertainty for some might mean removing a source of hope that one's condition might not be as severe as other people's, meaning being confronted with a real prognosis has also negative aspects for the patient. So we have to consider what would we like actually the patient to know about his prognosis. Having said this, I would like to end on time with my presentation. Thank you.